Everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tracey. I'm Member of Parliament for North Warwickshire and Bedworth and Chair of the Insurance and Financial Services, APPG. And first of all, welcome to this session. It's great to see so many people here on it. We're going to be discussing today how we can make the UK a global leader for insurance innovation. And I think by the turnout today, it's obviously a very important subject on everybody's mind. But what we're really trying to get out of the session today is what are the barriers and the opportunities for the UK in this area. And I think probably everybody on this call agrees that we've got a thriving insurance sector, and we've also got the skills to back it up here in the UK, which I think is fantastic for us. But the APPG has long been looking at how we can best support the future growth of the industry. And obviously, this is a key element. And it means really how we can harness the innovators in areas such as insurance tech, if we're to maintain our competitive advantage around the world, and also our reputation that we have for providing those services. So we've got an absolutely fantastic lineup of speakers who are going to actually discuss this and go through it in greater detail. Before we come to them, if I can, I just do a quick bit of housekeeping for you, which again, given the age that we're in, we're probably all very familiar with, first of all, which is if you're not speaking, can I ask that you go on mute, please? If you're not on mute at the moment, if you could do that, that would be brilliant. Just a reminder as well that the session is being recorded and it will be available afterwards as well. And after we've heard from our panel of speakers, there will be the opportunity to ask questions. Because there's so many of you on the call, if you could actually indicate in the chat box if you would like to ask a question. You don't need to necessarily put your question in, but if you just indicate on there rather than putting your hand up, because otherwise I'm going to be scrabbling around different screens trying to keep up with it also, just to make it life easier for me, if nothing else, if you could indicate in there. Just first of all as well, I'll just run through our list of speakers for you. First of all, we've got John Warburton, who is Government and External Affairs Chair of Insurtech UK. He's had 20 years in the insurance industry, or over 20 years, with companies like Aviva, Accenture, and most recently Allianz. Second, you will hear from Luisa, Barile, who is Chief Financial Officer at Bought by Many, which is an insurtech company itself, and it focuses on pet insurance. She's also chair of the Insurtech UK and a member of the Technician Insurtech Delivery Board. Third, we will hear from Trevor Maynard, who's current head of innovation at Lloyd's of London, and he also helped run the Lloyd's lab. He's a member of the Technician Insurtech Board and also part of the FinTech Delivery Board. And then finally, we're delighted to have Minister John Glen, who is Economic Secretary to the Treasury. I'll go to a bit of a more detailed introduction of John just before he speaks, but thank you all for joining us. We're delighted. It's a really, really good panel. So to kick us off, if I can, I will pass over, first of all, to John Warburton.
John, you're on mute. I just committed the cardinal error, didn't I, of being on mute? Apologies. Hi, I'm John Warburton. In addition to working with Insurtech UK, I do run my own commercial insurance insurtech called Konsileo that employs 50 people, many places across the country, from Forfar to Exeter, via Blackburn and Bradford. I think I've hit all of the red wall constituencies there, one way or another. I'm not sure about Forfar. But I'm here, though, today representing the Trade Association that has over 100 members, ranging from 2- and 3-person very early stage ventures to unicorn businesses worth over $1 billion and employing hundreds. And I think we really appreciate the APPG making the time to discuss innovation insurance today. So let's make a few points about, I think, why Insurtech is so important and potentially very strategic to the UK's economic development. And I think also why it's a bit different to the broader fintech sector. I think the first point is the one I just made, which is it's more regional. I think Insurtech is not only a square mile endeavour, it's represented across all 4 nations in the UK, in Midlands, north of England, etc. So it is very regional. And the second point is that Insurtech can address key systemic issues of risk management and productivity for society and the economy. And I think particularly if you think about commercial insurance, it can really support those 4 grand challenges of the industrial strategy: artificial intelligence and data, ageing society, clean growth, future of mobility. And it does that through better risk management for the businesses that are engaged in those sectors. The third point is the overall potential for insurance and Insurtech to be a globally preeminent sector for the UK, and that is both a catalyst for inbound and outbound investment from the UK, so sort of a national champion. It also, we're involved in the insurance industry, and the insurance industry, unfortunately, was a very early adopter of technology back in the 1960s, which has made us really saddled with some quite bad legacy problems and some chronic productivity problems, and we can act as a catalyst to innovate there. And also, Insurtech can improve consumer trust. Higher uptake of insurance means less need for the government to stand behind key risks as the insurer of last resort. But I think what we do feel is that we've been slightly the Cinderella relation to the broader fintech sector for some time. Some of that's structural. It's to do with Insurtech just getting started later than fintech, but there was also the Capability and Innovation Fund put 425 million in the early 2010s, and that made a massive difference to the growth of the fintech, which is one of the reasons we've seen so much success. And Insurtech does have some slightly different needs. So what do we want from the government? Well, I think the first thing we'd like from the government would be having a national champion for Insurtech, in the way that George Osborne in 2013 declared that fintech would be a global champion for the UK. And if we could convince you, Mr. Glen, to be the George Osborne for us, that would be amazing. The second point is, I think we would really appreciate, we've been working very closely with Innovate UK, which has really got a very, very interesting programme that really encourages deep technology-led innovation in our sector through what they call next generation services, and we really appreciate the Treasury taking a very positive look at their forthcoming proposals as to how they can support the sector. We really appreciate there is already good engagement with DIT and the Treasury on the international agenda of Insurtech. That is, Insurtech's moving to other jurisdictions and vice versa, and we really appreciate that could continue. And the final thing is that there is a little anomaly in the way that the IPT and VAT interact. It has a particularly adverse impact on Insurtechs because we tend to have a lot of costs, which if we were in another sector would be VAT. We would be able to reclaim VAT, but because we are collecting IPT, we don't have that benefit. So there is a sort of an innovation, if you like, extra hurdle for insurance that isn't true for other sectors. That's our perspective, if you like, from the Trade Association. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. And I'm pleased you mentioned about being in insurance being an early adopter of technology, because the reason I ended up in insurance was my dad actually wrote the first ever computer quoting system back in the 60s. So I've been at the forefront of this for many years. He didn't think it would ever catch on though, so he didn't market it. So kept it for himself. But there we go. So next up, we've got Luisa. Over to you, Luisa.
Thank you, Craig. I'm Luisa Barile. I'm the CFO at Bought by Many. We are an Insurtech in the pet space. Pet insurance is our main product, but we use technology and data to help pet owners more holistically enjoy life with their pets. We're probably one of the oldest Insurtechs. We have been growing triple digits over the last few years, every single year. Mostly in the UK, but we have been expanding into Sweden since 2019. And to the US more recently. And clearly with the business growth, we have also been growing our team. We now employ more than 260 people across London, Haywards Heath, and Birmingham, where we have hired just shy of 100 people over the last 12 months. Being responsible for the fundraise at Bought by Many, I speak with a lot of investors from all over the world, many of which have increasingly been attracted to Insurtech as they recognize the need for the industry to innovate. And they recognize the critical role that insurtechs play to facilitate this transition. Whether we talk about companies that provide services directly to the customers, like Bought by Many, or that sell technology solutions to traditional insurance companies, the end result is often a much needed increase in productivity and better customer outcomes. Just to give you an example from Bought by Many, our customer net promoter score last month was 82 against an industry average of 17. We already automate 35% of claims with a plan to double that over the next 12 months. And the net promoter score for customers that go through the automated system is above 90. So productivity and positive customer outcomes always come hand in hand. I believe we have all the ingredients in the UK for the UK to be a leader in the insurtech space. We have deep insurance expertise and qualified talent. We have a strong tech sector, and we have good access to capital markets. But as John was saying before, insurtech is not fintech. We have different challenges, and we need different support from the government. And one example, as John said, is the point of about VAT, which comes up a lot in the conversation with investors, because that's a very specific point, very different from any other industry, as VAT for us is the direct cost of the business. And investors shy away from anything that they don't understand or is a little bit different from what they're used to. So that it is a punitive treatment that discourages investment. I'll conclude insisting on the funding point. Innovation requires investment that requires funding. We need support from the government to enable better access to funding for our insurtechs, particularly in the early stages, but also to support the later stage company to scale internationally. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Luisa. And then finally, we will come to Trevor.
Thanks very much. I'm Trevor Maynard, Head of Innovation at Lloyd's of London. And as Craig said, I'm responsible for the Lloyd's Lab, our InsurTech accelerator, which John Glen kindly opened for us in 2018, and also our product development related thought leadership work. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you. The insurance industry has been investing in innovation for many years, from Munich Re's digital partners, Aviva Ventures, Plug and Play, and our own Lloyd's Lab, to name a few participants. And the UK and London is renowned for innovations in the insurance the world over. The first motor, aviation and satellite insurance came from our shores. More recently, we've seen expertise in terrorism, post-World Trade Center, cyber risks, and also natural hazards which keep pace with climate change. As incumbents, we've identified really clear benefits of working with insurtechs. Their agility and creativity is recognized, and the talent behind this is spread all over the UK. Recently, Lloyd's has announced a digital hub to be opened in Manchester, noting the critical mass of talent in that city, for example. Similarly, policyholders from across the UK will benefit from our collaborations, such as when Flood Flash used their sensor technology to pay claims immediately in Yorkshire after the flooding in 2020. I've recently chaired a working group of the InsurTech board focused on partnerships and barriers. And this report was based on interviews within the sector, noted a strong sense of positivity. We are working together really well. Some barriers were also noted, however, including our open and one-size-fits-all processes and a polite British culture of a slow no. So there's work to do, and our recent signing of the FinTech Pledge evidences our intention at Lloyd's to continue to improve. We regularly have insurtechs from UK and overseas saying that the UK is the global leader in insurtech, building on our world-famous insurance industry. And we hope that our focus on innovation, coupled with government investment and support, will keep it that way. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got there a very concise shopping list of things. So just before I hand over to the Minister to respond, just give a brief background to John. I'm sure, as I say, you're very familiar with him in the insurance industry, but he was elected in 2010 as MP for Salisbury. His first role was as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Chancellor, who was Philip Hammond at the time. And he's also served as a minister in DCMS. But it was in 2018 where he found his true calling as Economic Secretary to the Treasury and Minister. And it's always great to have him involved. He's been very, very good in working and helping the APPG and discussing issues with us. And I think the industry has also appreciated having stability in such a key period for the industry with the Minister. So it's great to have you with us again, and I'll pass over to you, John.
Well, thank you very much, Craig, for that kind introduction, and thank you to all that you do, and Lord David Hunt as well, in terms of championing the insurance industry. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you today. Your sector is critically important in financial services, and I listened very carefully to the three excellent contributions we've just had, and I'll come to and respond to some of those points in due course. But I do think that at its core, Insurtech is about finding new solutions to respond to a whole range of societal changes. And I think we've seen that through the pandemic on the impact on customers' finances and to flexible ways of working. It imposes new risks and new opportunities for the insurance sector. I think what we've already learned from contributions is that we do have a vibrant Insurtech sector, and I remember visiting Lloyd's with Trevor and seeing the great work in the sort of lab there. But also, I'm just aware of all the firms that are growing all the time, and I think that there is. I chair the Financial Inclusion Forum, and we had that meeting last month. And we had a Aviva and a startup firm there looking at how they are using technology to target new products at new markets. So I think innovation is very core to where the government sees the future for the industry. And so the Khalifa review, which again, I take the point from John about this sort of Cinderella thing, but I see Insurtech as core part to the broader fintech and a very key component of it, and indeed an area where there's enormous potential that's already being realised. But the Khalifa review that we used, Ron did an excellent piece of work there, looked at things like scale-up visas, looked at the way to bring in talent. Very often you will need very specific bespoke skills, and we need to be able to access that easily. We're also assisting firms to expand overseas, and the Department for International Trade will be launching some further initiatives to help deliver our ambitions on that front. Then I think one of the other areas is scale up, and the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, will be taking forward the concept of the regulatory scale box, which is basically trying to say to firms, and John set out a range of small firms to unicorns, where they need to have the sort of regulator, wrap around them and really help them to get to that next stage. So I'm, very up for further, collaboration with the industry, looking at how we can work with established insurers and startups. It's going to be very important that they come together, and the pledge is a key component of that in terms of that relationship being seen as important. I think data provided by insurers and analysed by Insurtechs could help deepen our understanding of risks and how to build more competitive pricing and bespoke pricing that is more accurate, and it allows those new propositions to come through. I think that more user-friendly platforms which allow customization of policies will be an area that will be an area of evolution and development. And I think innovative firms could pioneer flexible on-demand or usage-based policies. And I think that reflects the heritage in the first Insurtech unicorn in the UK, Zego, which is what it's doing in the field of driver and delivery cover. But I think this, the Governments and Tech Nations FinTech Pledge, which sets out the globally leading standards for partnerships between the big financial institutions and smaller FinTech firms, is really important. So I'm just conscious, though, that it's been a tough year for the insurance industry. And I think what was exposed in some areas is that, you know, there's misunderstanding. Insurance is a contract-based provision where, you know, people take out a product with a certain set of criteria. I think what this has thrown into focus, and this is a challenge more broadly for the industry, is how do we actually, going forward, establish, you know, what people can get in terms of security and provision of support in difficult circumstances, but recognizing, you know, the terms of that relationship are very clear. It's not some broad obligation, and we need to make sure that we work on that. So I look forward to working closely. One thing that was picked up on was the parallel with the fund that was set up essentially for the banks. I mean, that was a response to the remedy that we put in after the crash, and was therefore, you know, focused around the banking sector. But I think that what we need to do is look at where we can find, you know, specific interventions that apply some of the you know, thinking in other industries that would really take a breakthrough for, and would establish a breakthrough for Insurtech. And I take on the point on IPT and VAT. I shall come back on that in the Q&A. I'll pause there for now, Craig, and allow you to set up some piercing questions for us. Probably for me.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're for you, to be honest. But yeah, thank you very much for that, Minister, and it's good to hear the views on it. There are some questions starting to come through. If anybody else does have any questions, please ping them into the chat box, and if we can keep on topic of innovation, then that would be really helpful. If I could just kick off with one, Minister, just in terms of, I think one of the recurring themes that we heard through the speakers was the fact that this is not sort of a London-centric development, and this is regional, and it's going out to lots of areas, which obviously fits up very much with the government's levelling up agenda. And I think there's been, I think it's the next generation services through Innovate UK have been really positive for the industry. I just wonder what your thoughts are more broadly on whether that can be widened, and you know, whether there is more scope to get the people looking at these as careers out in the regions.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, Craig. I mean, the next generation service is part of the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, the ISCF. BEIS are owners of that, and that's delivered through the UK Research and Innovation, UKRI. So decisions on the specific challenges are those of BEIS and not the Treasury. But I mean, I do obviously have an opportunity to input into that. What your question addresses is this opportunity around for this sector, and I think John pointed it out very clearly, that it's sort of completely agnostic about where it can locate. And so, you know, we've got a sort of approach now where we've got free ports in every region of the UK, but we're also seeing clusters within financial services of specialism within Cardiff and Leeds and Birmingham, Manchester, Edinburgh. And you know, what I think will happen, and this comes through some of the recommendations from the Khalifa review, is how do we, you know, champion and find meaningful sort of catalyst interventions to, you know, develop those hubs in different parts of the United Kingdom. So I'm open to what that specifically looks like for Insurtech. But I think what we've got in place is a mindset across government to make those interventions. And, you know, often they grow organically from relationships on the ground. So, for example, I used the Starling Bank, not insurance, but the principle of it is where that relationship has been led from good collaboration with Southampton University leading to a significant hub of jobs and activity in and around there. So I'm open to look at any practical ideas, but I think the government is alive to making appropriate interventions. But what we really want is enabling actions rather than sort of subsidies, which you'd expect me to say as a Conservative minister.
Absolutely, but and that's great to hear. I think you're right. I think, but the point on it being agnostic in terms of where it's set up is great if as long as we harness that innovation, because it also doesn't matter what country it's set up in theoretically as well. And that's probably the challenge. So the conditions have to be right. But it's great to hear that it sounds like you know that you're very, very open to how we can enable that. And I think there's probably people on this call who can feed that in. I've got and if you could just say the organisation or company that you represent as well, that'd be helpful for context. So first up, I've got Martin Kopak.
Hello there, thanks Craig. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm going to start off with an offer of money, which hopefully will be well received. I'm from Fair by Design. We exist to eliminate the poverty premium, the extra costs poor people pay for essential services. Now, our research shows that the biggest element of the poverty premium now is insurance, and it's going to become bigger and bigger as we move from an individualised process of assessing risk. So we have a venture fund which invests in startups to create innovative ways to address the poverty premium, and insurance is the area that we still have not been able to find anywhere to fund. So that's an offer to everybody, and I'll put our website in the chat bar. The other thing is our research, which will be coming out soon with the Institute of Faculty of Actuaries, will be talking about some of the issues around individualised risk. And what we're finding is there's going to be and continue to be a clump of people who are just seen as non-desirable by the market and too high a risk. And we need to have quite nuanced conversations about where the market won't reach. We believe in competition, we'll put money into competition, but what is any advice perhaps from the Minister? Because we seem to be stuck between the FCA and the Treasury in conversations about this group of consumers, because they're kind of part social policy, part regulatory policy, which is the best forum for us to represent these consumers, because there's only a handful of consumer representative groups working in the insurance space. Thank you.
So we've had, if I may, Craig, I mean, we've had active conversations with your peers as part of this financial inclusion forum. So looking at, for example, if you think about household contents insurance, where in social housing, people don't take it out. And what we need is to find efficient ways of proving to people that they can put a small supplement on their rent bill, which actually gives them, a meaningful amount of support for white goods and other things that they can go wrong, etc. So we are looking at that, and that was something that we actually discussed at the last meeting of the forum. But I'm happy to correspond with you to see if I can sort of plug in your concerns into the right area. But I mean, what we're trying to do there is give credit unions and social housing providers greater discretion to look at what Insurtech can do to actually provide practical solutions for people who are not yet properly served by insurance, and can, for very modest amounts of money, particularly in pool provisions, get the sort of cover that they need. So that is work in progress, and I was very encouraged by the sort of conversation that happened at that last forum.
Thank you.
That's fantastic, and it's good to hear about that, because again, that's something we've been looking at, Minister. Somebody has just asked on here, which I'll ask, was where can people access outputs from the Financial Inclusion Forum?
We produced an annual report which came out a couple of months ago. It brings together representatives from industry, from the FCA, from Fair for All Finance, from Toynbee Hall, from social housing providers, to try and basically look at where there are gaps in provision of financial services. We've also taken a number of initiatives forward from that. So some of the work that we've done looking at the breathing space scheme, has had massive input from people on that group. So the report will be the first thing, and when we recycle the we change the membership of it as well to ensure that we have challenge. So one of the other things is credit worthiness, looking at how you actually get better data sets and don't actually do more damage by getting people to have their sort of credit rating observed, but how do you actually enable people to access more affordable financial services? These are sort of things we look at. So I'm sure on the website, the Treasury website, if you Google it, you'll be able to get it, but that would be the first step, I think.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up, I've got Patrick Muir.
Hi, Minister. I'm from a business called Sherpa. We are a company that's trying to change consumers and give consumers a view of their financial resilience and their sort of world of protection, and by doing so sort of change their relationship with insurance. One of the problems is a lot of insurance innovation is around the sort of existing view of insurance to make insurance companies work better how they currently do it. And as a result, one of the ways that Insurtech gets developed in this country is in proximity to the sort of the big beasts of the insurance carriers that currently exist. And also, one of my previous organizations, the digital bank Egg, through the use of like regional development schemes and stuff, we based our entire campus up in Derby, which at the time was a very rundown city, and we created 3,500 jobs there, which would have probably been scattered to the four winds and outsourced to other places. So I note your comment about providing incentives to people, but providing the large insurers with sort of fiscal incentives to invest in Insurtech, invest in companies that are doing Insurtech, because they're not very good by structure and various other things at actually doing it themselves, and providing tax incentives to grow businesses in some of these areas that need jobs and industries growing in them, in the way that we've seen Cardiff really invest and start to attract people in. And maybe re-onshoring some of the jobs that have gone to other countries. Was to take your note about not wanting to incentivize and provide incentives in these straitened times, but they can have an enormous impact on both companies' willingness to invest in Insurtech through investing in smaller Insurtech players, but also onshoring and creating jobs in some of those areas where we really need jobs creating.
Well, yes, I mean, the whole Freeports thing is designed to create within each region of the United Kingdom a zone of incentives, and it's designed to rebalance the economic geography of the United Kingdom. That's a very core thing to do. I think what you're also talking about there, or what I take from that, is this whole dynamic between where does innovation usefully come from? Does it come from within large established players or new startups? And frankly, what I see across financial services is a combination of the two. And obviously, sometimes the big banks and all the big institutions take on those startups and incorporate them into their offer. Other times, you see a small startup grow significantly to become a unicorn and transform the way that and challenge the incumbents. My job is to try and establish through dialogue with the PRA and others, when we think about, for example, Solvency II, how do you actually right size our regulatory environment across the United Kingdom to enable both incentives and a regulatory infrastructure within the FCA to enable new concepts to be founded and developed swiftly, but also to make the imperative for innovation easier for large firms to actually deploy capital into innovative new centres of activities. Your Derby example is an excellent one, and we need to replicate that across the United Kingdom, so that actually given what I said earlier about the agnostic nature of where people can operate these businesses, that's really true. And actually, we can actually bring in, you know, some parts of the United Kingdom do not have a financial services sector in the way that we would like it to have. And this is a great opportunity. And that's why, you know, we hope these significant and quite bold innovations in terms of free ports and policy are, you know, will bear fruit for this sector.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Paul McGlynn.
Sorry for taking so long to unmute. Pleasure to meet you all and you, Minister. I'm not sure if this question is down in the weeds or not, but I'll ask it nonetheless as a provider of technology, and it's, I guess, the role of blockchain in future insurance products and services. Obviously, most people, I'm sure, on this audience will have an inkling or deep knowledge perhaps on the potential for it to change the way that insurance is delivered, consumed and claimed for. And I was wondering what he sees as movement, certainly with big carriers and certainly even in other innovators.
Yes, I mean, I think blockchain DLT has an enormous impact across financial markets generally. It also imposes some real fundamental questions about how regulators operate. If you can verify transactions and you can securely raise capital in a different way using different verification mechanisms, you also can observe that and regulate that in a different way. So we're working collaboratively with the PRA and the FCA to examine what the interventions need to be. I think that the jury's out. I think across the world there are different approaches to the innovative concepts that are emerging in financial services, and with cryptocurrencies we've also got to get that balance right between enabling innovation but also protecting consumers who see an ad on the tube that says you're going to get a fantastic return, but probably don't really in some cases understand exactly what the risks are. And these are the sorts of challenges that we're coming to deal with. But with respect to blockchain in FMI generally, there's an enormous opportunity, and this is something the Chancellor and I are in great close conversation about. And I hope that we'll have further announcements to make in due course imminently on this, because I think it's something that we want to be at the sort of cutting edge of. We have an excellent reputation in the UK for the maturity of our regulations and the way that we deal with innovation. And the Chancellor's speech on the 9th of November set out our determination to be at the cutting edge of that. So it's a good reminder of the constant innovation in the sector and our need as a government to be pressing on the frontiers.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Minister. And I've got Johnny Timpson.
Craig, thank you, and good morning, Minister. Well, I wear a number of hats. I've got a Cabinet Office role to improve access to insurance covers and careers for people with disabilities and health conditions. Equally, as a member of the Prime Minister's Group for championing dementia communities for the insurance sector, I've got a couple of asks really to make of everyone really on this call, which is, this is Global Access Awareness Day. So please, fintech sector, let's be transformative. Help us please improve access to insurance covers and careers for people with disabilities and health conditions, visible and non-visible. And in doing so, improve access for everybody. A characteristic of people who are disabled, and in fact everyone with protected characteristics, is that their income does tend to fluctuate. Income fluctuation is the new norm, actually, for the majority of employees in the UK, but particularly low income groups, women, people in the BAME community, and people with disabilities. So please help us aid those consumers access the covers they need. And it really speaks to the work that Martin's been doing with Fair by Design and tackling the poverty premium. Equally, wearing my hat as the dementia champion for the sector, please help us reach out to NHS England and develop a social prescribing partnership that enables us to improve the support to vulnerable customers in terms of signposting and pathways to the help and support that is available to them from insurers and banks, but it's incredibly difficult to access at this minute in time. Thank you.
I think it kept cutting out there a bit. Did you get enough of that, Minister?
Right. Yeah, I got that. I mean, I think what Johnny's referring to is what goes to the heart of Insurtech and the opportunity and responsibility that go together, which is actually providing bespoke solutions for ever more, tightly defined segments of the market. And I think obviously you referenced the particular challenges of various groups of seen and unseen disability. And I recognise that Insurtech has a vital role to play, and I'm very happy to receive practical suggestions of how government might move some of that forward. But what I think would be clear to many of the entrepreneurs and representatives of firms on this call is that they would welcome the opportunity to access the different needs of those groups mentioned. And I applaud that, and absolutely, and do whatever I can. We've interviewed. I'm responsible for women in finance. I've established with BAYS a task force with the City of London looking at how we can deal with socioeconomic diversity or lack of in financial services. And I think this is a similar area where it may be appropriate for us to come up with a new and additional intervention.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Louise Biriteri.
It's great, well pronounced. Hi, I'm Louise. I'm the founder of a company called Pickle, and we specialise in insurance for the sharing economy, so in particular shared mobility markets and also the Airbnb market as well. One of the challenges that we've found, and I think this probably links to Martin's comment earlier on around poverty, is that being able to get access to insurance capacity from the large incumbents in order to bring a new insurance product to market where there's very limited previous experience of what the underwriting might look like for that market, or where those markets are perceived to be potentially undesirable, people with really poor credit history, for example. The insurers are very reluctant to cede that capacity. And it's very much like the situation that you had with many of the flood areas, where ultimately, Flood Re was put in place in order to encourage the market to actually start to provide coverage for people living in flood areas. So my question is, I wonder if the government would consider almost an innovation Re in order to try and help to stimulate the provision of capacity to support Insurtechs in bringing new and innovative products to market and being able to reach some of those gaps like the poverty ones.
Thank you, Louise. I'm very happy to look at any constructive ideas. I think the issue here is about data and risk driving capital deployment. And the bottom line is there are parts and cohorts of our communities where the risks are higher and often the data is more sporadic. And one of the challenges that we need to overcome is how can we fill those data points so that we can build a better profile of individuals that then makes the deployment of capital and investment in commercial propositions more straightforward. And I think in the digital age where more and more data points can be reliably collected, and we can look at people's rental history and other data points more straightforwardly, then that will improve. But absolutely, I'm very happy to look at it. But what we've got to understand is what would the intervention be doing? Because it can't. If we're actually just talking about a subsidy, that's just doesn't seem to me where we need to be. What we need to be able to do is drive information flows to remove the reticence that you spoke about and ensure that you can have better collaborations between those that you need partnerships with to get to these particular groups. It's the classic sort of work that we do on the Financial Inclusion Forum, and I'm very happy to look at it in specific detail because it does bear scrutiny of looking at some case studies and trying to say, well, what needs to change here. But I mean, I do look practically at these things. A couple of years ago, John Bird, Lord Bird, wanted us to do sort of, essentially mandatory assessments, obligations on people to do assessments of people's creditworthiness. My assessment of that was that the right intent was behind it, but by doing those assessments and giving a negative readout, you can do more damage to individuals. So we've got to try and look, how the market works, how data, what bad data means, and how to overcome it and get people into a better place. But we are open to doing new things. In the budget, we committed 3 million to interest-free loans, recognising that if we can get that right, we can partner with credit unions to come up with meaningful interventions. Off topic today, but what I'm just saying is I'm happy to look at anything.
And I think Trevor just wanted to come in on this point as well.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Just to say that we have something at Lloyd's called the Product Innovation Facility, which is 27 of our managing agents who have come together to offer to collaborate with people with great questions on like this. So I can put a link in the chat if people want to get in touch and have product ideas, because we agree we want to try and create new products to meet these needs. Can't promise every time, and obviously things have to be risk-based. We have to ultimately cover our costs, but nevertheless, there's a great willingness to explore this. So I'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Trevor. I've just got James, but it's James from Worry and Peace.
Hi, everyone. Minister, members of the committee, thank you so much for hosting this. I'm James, the founder of Worry and Peace, and delighted also co-chair of Insurtech UK. So thanks to the members for coming today. One of the reasons I love insurance is because it feels so ubiquitous. We can engage in virtually any part of the economy and business. I guess I'd love to understand from you, Minister, as well, whilst fintech is a really useful umbrella term for anything in financial services, where does Insurtech get viewed as part of government policy? Because I don't know if I speak for all the members here, but we certainly feel like the other side of the finance coin, a cousin, a difference. I suppose if someone was in banking, we would see them as very much same but different, if that makes sense, an inverted banking model, so to speak. So does the government have any particular view on where we fit in the landscape? And would it be credible for us to really pitch ourselves as same but different and be helpful for you in terms of the way you work on policy?
Yeah, I mean, I do get this. I mean, the point that John made initially, and you reiterated, around this sort of sense that perhaps you're not core to fintech. I see you as core to fintech. I mean, I see Insurtech as a part of that you derive obviously from a different part of the industry. And I've got banks, retail banks, wholesale banks. Then there's life insurance. House insurance, different subsets of the industry across all of them. But I see the application of technology to improve data flows and access to consumers is a universal set of drivers that is true for you. And the labs that I visited in Lloyd's and the work that we did, and in terms of setting up the Insurtech board, and it is about recognizing that there are discrete areas. I think that the fintech pledge, we've seen more signatories from the insurance sector, the commitment to support startups. I identified the problem that we had. The fund couldn't be applied because it was a remedy for the RBS solution, and therefore it wasn't in scope. But I'm also open to look at how we can do things better and distinctly for you as a subsector, if you like. But I don't have that mindset that you're inferior to. I see you as part of it, but a discrete element dealing with the insurance sector. I wanted to come back on the VAT point. We have said in the budget that we're going to look at the VAT point as well. And I'm told we're going to come forward with something quite imminently around a working group to examine that. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But my view is you're a world leading sector. I'm happy to work with you to find what meaningful additional things I can do to promote you. But you shouldn't feel like that weaker brethren, because you're not in my mind, and not in the mind of my officials in the Treasury.
John Warburton, did you just want to pick up on that?
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and thanks, Minister. On this point, I guess there's two things going on here. One is the nomenclature, insurtech, fintech, which sometimes we get a bit exercised about. I take the point. It doesn't matter really that side of it. I think what is material is the application of government policy. So the Khalifa review itself, I did participate in some workshops. It wasn't quite positioned in the way that you just expressed it in terms of where insurance was. It wasn't one of the building blocks. It was sort of, there was payments and something else, and then it was insurance. So I think it wasn't quite it wasn't core to the structure in the way it was done. Having said that, I do agree with you that the remedies that the Khalifa review came out with are very helpful to Insurtech as well. I think it's just a question of the mechanism to engage with your department and others on the insurance specific issues, which are a little bit different. And I think it's that, and I'll just come back to, you mentioned it earlier, the Innovate UK, UKRI initiative around next generation services, I think we see as a really, really interesting opportunity for getting into those very insurance specific, data-led ways of identifying risk, addressing exactly the issues that Louise was talking about. So I think if whilst you're a stakeholder in that, I think ultimately you probably hold the purse strings though as to where that initiative goes. And I think if you can give your certainly due consideration to the applications that come through UKRI, that would be hugely appreciated, because I think it would do something to address that little bit slight. We do have that slight feeling of being Cinderella, as I mentioned earlier. Thanks very much, Craig. Thanks, Minister.
Thanks, John. I obviously listened very carefully to what you said there. I mean, the Khalifa review tried to look at generic buckets around skills, capital investment, regulatory environment, the international environment, but I'd get that the output could be seen one way or the other. I'm not disputing anything with you. I look forward to trying to address what you've said and actually see what I can do better to support you as a sector. I'm not resisting what you said. I'm happy to work with you to do that.
I think I'd just add it in terms of, if there's not that obvious pathway, and then the APPG is always a route into that as well. I've got time probably for just one final question, if it's very quickly, which is from Alison McHugh. And then I think that will bring us to a close.
Hello, thank you very much for today's event. I'm Alison McHugh from Case Blocks. We operate in the UK and also in Hong Kong, and what we're really looking for is more support really in terms of international trade and how we might access support from the UK government to do that.
I think I mentioned in my remarks, Alison, some of the work that is imminent from my colleagues in international trade. I'm not familiar exactly how that will work, but I mean, what we as MPs are trying to do is, bring in firms that have got international challenges and opportunities, and work with DIT officials to run workshops constituency by constituency. There's a massive program of work rolling that out. But I think, in terms of the specific support that you need, why don't you write to me, and I will, see if I can work out how that fits with what's evolving from DIT, and try and give you some meaningful pointers about how we can support you. But perhaps it would be best if we could take that one offline, because I don't think I can prescribe usefully what the DIT are going to come up with in this response right now.
All right, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, Minister, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being so candid with your answers. I'm sure everybody on here will appreciate that, and also how not just your understanding of the challenges, which I think is great for us all to understand, but also that how open you are to looking at other solutions, which I think is going to be huge for this industry. So we really, really appreciate that. Can I also thank all of the other panelists as well for your time, and for everybody else who has been involved. I think the feedback starting to come through is just incredibly positive. So I think it's been a very, very well good use of everybody's time. And Minister, thank you again for being so generous with yours. And I'm sure we will speak on other issues soon.
Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you to everyone for participating. We enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thanks all.